Then and now, we got the crown when we rock the town. Hot sound keep us breaking ground while we chillin' lounge. 3 generations, black nerd soldiers, podcast snipers trying to pop culture. Allegedly, haters try to talk, but a pedigree in rare form.
Next topic is one that I really was irritated by. It's something that I was educated on a year or two ago, watching, shout out to my guy, Blur Without Fear. Ernie did a video on it, breaking things down in detail. And I was like, interesting. I never knew that, because I always proceed with preconceived information I heard growing up. When I got the information, I took in the information, did my own research, and saw, okay, that is true. And what that information is the whole idea that Professor X and Magnus, Cranium Head, Magneto were created and based off of the ideals of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Brother Malcolm X. For people that are not aware, that is incorrect. A lot of people, and that I've learned from making posts around this in different Facebook groups and on threads and doing a whole stream about it, there are a lot of people that saw an interview or believe they saw an interview that Stan Lee did where he discussed that inspiration being true, or that's what he was based those characters off of. But when you do simple Google searches and look at the timeline of events of what happened and look at context and have some form of media literacy, you'll understand that he was fucking lying. I want people to understand Stan Lee, in a lot of other instances, is a liar. Not saying he's a bad person, but he's also he's a showman at the end of the day. He knows what lies to tell to make his products and himself look like they are bigger than life. And for the most part, he was bigger than life for a lot of comic book fans. Like, there's a reason he was cameoing in fucking every Marvel movie for a damn near 25 plus years in some form or fashion. It became a whole thing because people like seeing him. He's the mascot. He's this mythical creature. But in this particular instance, I'll give a little bit of background research, and I'll pass it on to you guys to get your thoughts as well. But for the X-Men. X-Men came out, I believe 1963 was the exact year. Again, amidst the civil rights movement at that point in time. I need people to understand at this point in time in America, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X were perceived as menaces to society. They were perceived as communists. They were perceived as terrorists to an extent, depending on where you were in a part of the country. So people want you to believe that this white man who was starting this up-and-coming comic book company, which is already a medium that is perceived to be mostly for children at that point in time, you're telling me that he's going to create characters with ideals based off of who the country believed were Nazis at this point, the people that are more than likely going to purchase your book, you want me to believe you made characters based off of them at that point in time. Cool. Let's say I believe that bullshit. Stan Lee only wrote and created 19 to 20 issues of the original X-Men at that point. After that, he himself discussed how he left the X-Men books because he could not keep up with writing all those characters and the other projects he was writing at the same time. I think it was like Spider-Man or the Hulk at that point. So he then passed that off to somebody else. The X-Men then go on to get written by other people, and they didn't really pop off till probably the mid-70s, which is around 75 when like Wolverine was introduced to the team, and then really became a household name around the 80s when you get X Storm and Chris Claremont taking over the writing for it, and he soap opera-fied the entire team and the entire stories that he was telling there. And then not too long after that, you see the animated series pop off, and then the X-Men went into a different stratosphere after that, obviously. Chris Claremont was the one who developed the idea of Magneto being a Jewish child who went through the Holocaust, as well as all the other prejudicial, for like that's probably not even a word, but the things that regards to prejudice and racism and things like that within the mutant community. I have an interview here that he did, Chris Claremont himself did, where he was discussing the idea of who these characters are based off of, right? The interview he did with Empire a long time ago. Because they pretty much asked him about the direct comparison. And he himself discussed how he could see the validity in people's comparisons with that. He's like, in what he wrote, he could see where people would get that from. But he himself also discussed how he did not do that because he believed it would be presumptuous in his own perspective to make an equivalent analogy because he is a white man, first and foremost, and he's also not American. He's an English man. He based both of those characters in Magneto and Charles Xavier off of two significant Jewish, I'm going to say creators, two Jewish people within world history. One of which was a prime minister, I believe, at one point, and the other was somebody that was believed to be a terrorist at a different point in time. These are who he based his characters off of. He himself has said that in multiple occasions. So again, I want to provide the context. MLK and Malcolm X are looked at as terrorists during the time that the X-Men were created. They didn't become popularized until the 80s for the most part, when Chris Claremont took over. Chris Claremont, the writer and creator of this backstory, said himself he did not base these characters off of that. Yet somehow, over time, for whatever reason, Stan Lee wouldn't lie at a certain point and like propped it up to be a popular narrative because people continued to ask him about that. And he just wouldn't either wouldn't say no, he would like endorse the shit. And people took that and people just believed that to be fact for years up until this point. And it blows my mind because in the comment section for a lot of these posts, and I think I know Otis probably saw a bunch of them because the posts went fucking crazy in the Facebook groups. I'm seeing grown individuals who are probably at bare minimum like 30 to 30 and up, looking at an interview that I showed them directly of Chris Claremont saying this, and they're still just in their mind, do your research. Stan Lee said it, so it has to be true. Nigga, my brother, you are grown. How the fuck can you not take in information? It's a simple, I did one Google search to find this fucking interview. I didn't have to dig deep for it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I want to get y'all's thoughts and perspectives. It seems like there's this like dilemma within the Black nerd community that we have to where if we see any group within media that seems to be oppressed or going through any form of segregation or just overall like hate crime, we attach to them and like make them black coded even when they're not, i.e. the Uchihas, i.e. the Namekians. The list goes on and on and on. Yeah. I don't know what I mean. I know what it is because again, you want that. We thirst for representation and wherever we can get it. But at the same time, let's not force it into areas where it wasn't even a thing at. But what are your thoughts? That was me. I had a longer breakdown of my own stream, but at this point, it's like the third time I've talked about it, so I didn't want to like drag it out for another hour.
You want to go first, though?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first off, to say that they are, Professor X and Magneto are directly based off of Xavier and Malcolm X would be belittling to who they were as people and what they actually stood for. I mean, of course, they like very foremost, looking for civil rights for Black people, but that was just kind of like the starting point. They were looking for actual equity, looking for like support to make sure that Black people have the ability to build like comfortable lives, have jobs, and like literally same things that we're fighting for today, like were the big staples of what they were trying to build. And the fact that even in the history books, it's reduced to just like oh yeah, Black people can go outside without being immediately murdered on the street. I mean, like, of course we want that still, but like, just know that the mission isn't done, and history paints it as like something that is. I think is a disservice to what they are. And then again, that piece was never a part of what the X-Men were. Like, I mean, of course, they dysmorphic people trying to find a place to live comfortably in society without being attacked on the streets and ridiculed, and have people pointing and throwing beer bottles at them on the street. Like, I mean, yes, that piece is adjacent, but I mean, that particular thing happens in so many different cultures around so many different points in history. Like, that's just, when there is a race of people that are othered, they are treated in that way. Going from the BC times to today. I mean, it's just, it is a shame that, Black people automatically like attach that to ourselves. We're used to being so oppressed that like seeing anyone going through something similar, we just kind of automatically cling and attach to. But we got to kind of get away from that to a degree, and instead of making it like look like a race thing, just understand like that's a class thing. The higher class, whoever they are looking down on whatever the lower class is in some way, shape, or form. So understanding that and realizing like those connections are familiar, but it doesn't have to represent you specifically. Mm-hmm. And just seeing it's like, oh, that's another connector piece that we have to so many different societies around the world, because somebody's been the lower class to an upper class that was subjugating them in some way, shape, or form, or fashion. But yeah, just all around to say like, attaching them to two of the biggest figures in Black history is a disservice to what those figures stood for.
Yeah, I get that. And I think part of it too. So I mean, I won't reiterate the things you all both said already, but just two quick things. One, I think is a more prominent thing is the Mandela effect, as far as people misremembering something almost collectively. Like you said, there was that one random interview, as I saw you put on your other show on the Diesel, the Dojo, where there's an interview where people are kind of talking about how, wasn't this as far as like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King comparison and everything else? And it's like, yes, that's it. And so people take that and run with it and say, oh yeah, that's what they're trying to say. They're misremembering what actually was stated or whatever was meant as truth when it never was. Another thing too is I remember when I was younger, when I was a kid, as I was reading X-Men and watching the TV show and everything else, and yeah, as a Black man in the South, I was like, oh, the mutants are clearly other, regardless as far as the specifics of it. They're other, whether they be LGBTQ plus, Black, whatever, Jewish immigrants. They're different, and they're directly bigoted against because of that. So as a Black man, I could relate to them in some capacity. And there was a figure that was trying to help them in Professor Xavier, but there was also a figure on another side that seemed a bit more militant in Magneto. However, I never connected the dots as far as saying, oh, that's directly supposed to be Malcolm X or that's directly supposed to be Martin Luther King. I didn't go that far. I just saw it as these are others trying for a better thing. And in some capacity, there is a civil rights movement that they're working towards in the X-Men. Yes, that's true. But things do, as you continue to as you read more and more of the books, the characters get more and more problematic. I mean, Professor Xavier and Magneto get more and more problematic. There was even on the dojo, they talked about how at the beginning Magneto was too rational, was too much of a borderline hero essentially. So they had to make him that much more directly of a terrorist, which is not what Malcolm X ever was as far as trying to directly harm people. Obviously, I know it's MLK. So having the comparisons have very fine limits. They have very fine limits. But I do get, like you're saying, Deb, where and also Otis, it's a very bizarrely common thing where we do try to associate ourselves with anyone that is any people in any medium that is oppressed. We try to find everything that's coded, whether it be, like you said, Namekians or whatnot. And it is sad that we do that.
Just to add further proof, just because, again, I know there are going to be people that watch this that are going to deny that being the case. And let's just have a moment of silence for this.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill.
In regards to a lot of what Otis had to say, a big thing to take into account is their beliefs, right? Malcolm X for the most part, in how you discuss what his beliefs were. Again, those beliefs suddenly changed a little bit as time went on. I think near towards the end of his life, he even started to agree more with MLK and MLK with him, which is probably why they got them up out of there pretty quickly, because they're both agreeing on something and unifying.
Yeah, he was assassinated for a reason.
But they fought for rights, they fought for defense, and fought for safety of Black folks. Never, ever did they fight for superiority, domination, slavery, or genocide. Right. When you're looking at the original concepts and original points of Magneto, there is an Exhibit A that I want to show the jury. This is a panel from a comic that Magneto was in from back in the day. He says, the human race no longer deserves dominion over the planet Earth. The days of mutants is upon us. The first phase of my plan shall be to show my power to make Homo sapiens bow to Homo superior. He wants humans to bow to him. He wants superiority and control over them. Moving on to the next one. We now have panels from a plot that he had in a different book. So where he essentially brought over a mastermind to cast visions on everybody within the country of Santa Marco to make them believe that this group of insurgent troops were storming on their city so they can take it over and they can serve underneath Magneto, but he can rule them. Ethan, could you tell me what these soldiers kind of look like to you in the way that they're moving and the way that they operate? Does that look familiar to you?
Yeah, they do very much like goose-stepping Nazis, yeah.
Otis, you're aware what Nazis are, right? You know how bad they were, aren't you?
Yeah. Were?
Yeah. Again, I find it very interesting that he is conjuring up troops in his own imagination, at least from the imagination of Mastermind, and these troops are in the imagery of Nazi soldiers, especially when you consider the fact that Magneto in himself is a Jewish man who underwent Holocaust camps that were ran by Nazi soldiers. When we're looking at the allegory that is supposed to be there around Black people being allegories for mutants, I want everybody to keep in mind there's an entire whole panel or a couple issue where Kitty Pryde publicly called other Black people the N-word with a hard ER, and then promptly got slapped the fuck out of by Storm later on. Because why the fuck would you do that when we're also persecuted? I want people to go do their research as well and look at the number of X-Men writers that there have ever been from 63 up until now for any mainline X-Men book. And no, I don't mean X-Force. No, I don't mean New Mutants. I mean any book that has X-Men on it, whether it be Amazing, Infamous, Unbreakable, whatever it may be. You could probably count them on one hand. So for a book that is supposed to be so deeply connected to the Black movement and the Black evolution, there are little to no Black influences within these books whatsoever until modern day. And most of those influences came from the early 2000s on to now, maybe the mid 2000s up until this point, where you had writers that were more accepting of Black folks and other people that wrote those books at that point in time. You're starting to see it a lot more now recently with someone like Gail Simone, who's an amazing writer who makes it a point to have a lot of representation within his books. And you start to see a lot more New Mutants that are of different colors and heritages and et cetera, et cetera. Even going into the aspect of Black people being within the X-Men. The only Black X-Men and the people that were in the mainline team, to my knowledge, were one Bishop, and Bishop being half Black, half Native American, and then Storm almost 20 years after the team was first created. That's just some information there for people that, want to look that stuff up. They need factual stuff. But let's continue to talk about facts. I discussed the beliefs of Magneto and how that compared to Malcolm X and how crazy that was. Let's talk about Charles. And I think people have a certain preconceived idea of who Charles Xavier is based off of the 2000s movies. People, if you read the comics to any extent, I want you to understand that Charles Xavier is a horrible individual, like a shitty person to the extreme. There is a reason that Cyclops cold murdered him in front of everybody. Someone that is considered to be like his father figure in a lot of different ways. Murdered him because he hated the way he operated. The X-Men team you're introduced to in 63, we find out later on in the run, it was not the original X-Men team. We find out that Charles Xavier had an initial team that was involving another character that's related to Cyclops by the name of Havoc, his brother. That team was lost on some mission on some random island, and instead of Xavier trying to find them, instead of Xavier taking accountability for that and stopping the continuation of a paramilitary force made from child soldiers, he said, I will replace them. And not only will I replace them, I'm going to replace them and have the leader be the little brother of the other nigga that I had leading the last team. Beyond him being a purveyor of child soldiers and paramilitary forces, he was also a weird nigga that needed to not be around children because he had this weird love interest for Jean Grey. And everybody, I want you to keep in mind, this isn't new things that were made around the character. These were things that were around the character when he was first created. He had this love affair that he had, his love boner that he had for Jean Grey. It wasn't just Cyclops and Wolverine that wanted her. That nigga Charles wanted her too. He wanted some Jean. Outside of him creating child soldier teams and sacrificing to go fight his battles for himself, because again, I want you to understand that MLK would never bring on other people to fight his battles for him. He was in the streets. He was actively a part of the movement, whether it be the bus boycotts, the marches on Washington, whatever it may be. He was there on the front lines. He didn't send other people, let alone children, to fight his battles for him. And as far as we know, he wasn't involved in anything weird around children. Not putting it out there, but I don't know people at all. I can only go off of what was directly seen. There's a lot of fucked up shit around Charles Xavier and a lot of fucked up shit around Magneto. So the fact that you're going to compare them and say you base these characters who are incredibly horrible, despicable human beings really just shows a little bit of disrespect in my eyes if you're going to make that be a thing. I wholeheartedly believe that, similar to J.K. Rowling, when Stan Lee made this story, he made them based on very simple concepts of good guys versus bad guys. And he wanted that to be that. And he left it at that. So all the revisionist history of involving like these metaphors for civil rights and for people being underrepresented and people being persecuted, that shit was not around until Chris Claremont wrote it. And this is all Stan Lee trying to take credit for work that he did not do. He's putting his name on the group project, even though he didn't directly work on all of it.
Side note, I mean, we know that Voldemort is essentially a school shooter with extra steps. Is Magneto also that?
I wouldn't say so because I don't think he ever attended the same school. Well,
I mean,
later on when he was running
X-Men.
X-Men.
The school, though.
Yeah. But that point, you just call that thing a contractor. He's just a construction worker with extra steps. Or with fewer steps. My bad. It's interesting. Again, I understand that a lot more layers and things were added to these characters later on. But again, key emphasis on later on with other writers that added more layers to these characters.
Yeah,
and I don't know. It's just something that's really nasty to me when I'm looking at them and doing more research into who the beliefs of these people were, and especially as I'm becoming a little bit more, I'll say a little more radical in my beliefs around like pro-blackness and being more protective over my culture, especially working where I work. When I see things like this and I have knowledge on who these characters are, I'm like, no, stop. Let's not bullshit here. Let's not do this.
I think part of it too is you mentioned before the movies with the 2000s, whatever the Bryan Singer movies, which is another whole problem right there. But those movies, the way they do portray Charles and Eric or whatever Magneto, it is very much like they're trying to portray them as much more black and white. As far as I'm a hero fighting for these people, and I'm a hero fighting for my people too, but in a different way. Even that's still not the same exact parallel, but it's a closer thing. Also, it's definitely portraying Charles in a much more positive light.
Oh, he was so benevolent.
So it's like that's not at all how he's. I mean, the X-Mansion has been around in the comics and forever. So it's another thing too, as far as like that's in most people haven't read the comics that much. So for them, that's how they see Xavier. That's how they see Magnus or Magneto, whatever. So they're drawing from a much more shallow pool as well.
Keep in mind, Magneto was enslaving mutants on Krakoa originally. Like to make Krakoa operate, he enslaved mutants and made them work. So like, you're telling me the guy's supposed to be based on Malcolm X. You're telling me that Malcolm X would be cool with enslaving black people for the betterment of black people?
Yeah.
Like, my nigga, stop. Let's not do that.
He left the black Muslims because of issues with how they treated people.
So yeah, that again, that's just something I wanted to kind of get into again. I know I've discussed it a bunch now, but that's just, again, a lot to think about as we go into the next phase of X-Men stuff, from Doomsday to the next season of X-Men 97 to the next phase of the shitty X-Men comics we're about to get. Because right now they are in a shitty place. Revelation was not it. And Into the Shadows looking like it's going to be a repeat of that because the current X-Men editor is poo-poo. So yeah, it's not good. X-Men are not in a good place right now at all.
I'm still hopeful for X-Men season 2, X-Men 97 season 2.
Yeah, the shows, though, all the other media's going to carry it, but the source material, like, they were good. When Gail Simone was doing her thing with the Exceptional X-Men, that was great. But then X-Men Age of Revelation started, and they just brought all that shit in there. Like the Storm run that Moe was doing, that was amazing. We're tying your shit into all this shit now. So now everything you were doing is probably going to be put on pause so we can do this major event that was discombobulated as fuck. But I won't get into all that, my bad. Are there any other like thoughts, sentiments on this topic before we kind of get into the last thing?
No. Yeah, and I think it is not to. I think y'all are right as far as like that's a bigger problem as far as us attaching ourselves to tragic mistreated characters so much as a people. That's another whole problem in general, I think.
And I understand it. I get it. I think there are certain characters where it works. Like if it's a character that is black coded, like somebody like Sonic, right? Like Sonic didn't really have as much like of a.
Is he black coded? Like, really?
He's black coded as fuck. Look, the clothing he wears, the music you look at a lot of the references he makes within the game and the shows. Like he's black coded as fuck. All the headshots.
He's voiced by Jaleel White. Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm. Most of the headshots, most of the animals, like him, Knuckles, Shadows for the most part. You could argue Tails and Rouge I know Rouge is based off of Jennifer Lopez. Another shit like that. But yeah,
I never thought about it. I'm too old. I'm not to talk that much, but yeah.
But yeah, again, if characters are black coded, I get it. Hell, I even understand certain characters like Piccolo, right? Like the Namekians looking like this impoverished people that were taken as slave labor. Like I get it, I understand. And then robbed for the resources in the Dragon Balls. I understand where you would get that from, but even then, I would beg us to not look for them where they don't exist, and also to just also look for a representation that is purposely put there as well, with, rather it be through indie comics. Again, I've had this whole thing of combating people an idea of asking you to support indie stuff, let alone just looking for stuff that's purposefully making those allusions or those allegories. So,
and also try to, if you can, if you are making your own book or you're any creator, it's okay for it to be more nuanced. You do not have to have torture porn every time a black person is in a project or in a story. It's okay for them to be a different type of character, give them a different type of journey. We love that type of stuff. That's fun. We don't always want to suffer.
Yeah. You got anything, Otis?
No, I mean, I feel like we've said it all.
Bet. Let's move into the last topic of the show. This one should be